Spain's Carlos Sainz were drivers of great ability. But there were few people betting against Juha Kankkunen, the former world champion and a proven winner on the Lombard RAC. Kankkunen had won the event in 1987, then driving for Lancia. But this season, in the Toyota Celica GT4, he's been limited to one victory on the Australian Rally. But on the stately homes and the race circuits of the opening day of the RAC, a Toyota was the car to have, and Kankkunen was right on the pace. He'd gone off on the first corner of the first stage, but he was in the lead by stage 3 and stayed there through Donington Park and Silverstone. He had a 5-second lead at the end of the opening day. This is Spain's Carlos Sainz, certainly tipped as a world champion of the future, and this year he came very close to victory in Finland's Thousand Lakes Rally, the world championship event that's closely related to the demands of the RAC. Sainz was quickest on the opening stage, 4th overall at the end of the day. Kenneth Eriksson recovered well from leaving the handbrake on for the first stage, not quite as bad as last year when he was the rally's first retirement, going out on that opening stage with a broken camshaft belt. Good first day, and he'd finish it in 2nd place. There was a feeling all through the day that the Toyota drivers were trying just a little harder than is usual on the opening day, but cutting the corners around the straw bales of Donington is less hazardous than it would be in the forests in the days to come. David Llewellyn, though, has already proved himself in the forests. His victory last month sealed a long overdue British Championship, but now for a bigger challenge.
With the season we've had, you know, winning the Shell British Open title and getting that behind me, obviously I'm in the right frame of mind for the job, and you know, the Toyota has proved very, very good on the British forest this year, and you know, it's the same forest, well, mostly the same forest we're using on this event, so you know, we're hoping that we can do the job and have a bit of fun at the same time.
Sometimes in the past, Llewellyn has appeared to be a little burdened by the constant high expectations, but he rose to the occasion on this first day, 3rd place overall, despite a costly puncture at Chatsworth. And just look at this for confident car control around the twisting layout at Silverstone. End of the first day, there will be Toyotas in the first 4 places. So where was the challenge coming from? Well, possibly from Mitsubishi with the turbocharged 4-wheel drive, 4-wheel steering Galant. We know all about Pentti Ricola from the British Championship. He was getting his first chance in the Group A car, teammate to Ari Vatanen. Vatanen won the 84 RAC in the Peugeot, the car in which he later had the accident which nearly cost him his life. He's won Paris-Dakar since then, but not a World Championship rally. The Galant could be the car to provide him with that.
This very receptive car, I think, it's because of the size. It's rather big, which can be a handicap sometimes, but it makes it more stable, and it's quiet also, and people think that the noisy cars are the only fast ones, and in fact it's deceptively fast.
By Vatanen's own admission, he wasn't on his best form on the opening day. There were electrical problems which left him short of power, and he was also quick to admit that the driver wasn't firing on all cylinders either. In car with Vatanen and co-driver Bruno Berglund.
Hairpin left, 100, left and hairpin right.
The mist was no more than an irritation on the first day. Within 24 hours, though, it would be a bigger problem. This is Vatanen at Donington Park.
20, hair right maybe. And double caution left of a brow, into narrow, 8.
End of the opening stages, Vatanen was no better than 8th, ragged but entertaining. Pentti Ricola had been given his one-off Group A drive by Mitsubishi as acknowledgement of his fine performance in gaining the Group N title for the manufacturer on the British Championship. He declared himself genuinely excited by the greater power and performance. He's an experienced driver, but with little World Championship involvement outside this event in recent years. He finished 4th in a privately entered Lancia last year, and if he can get to grips with the Galant, he could be a genuine contender. But Agricola would be 5th at the end of the day. The two-car entry from Mazda provided amply qualified drivers, even if the machinery wasn't quite of world-beating pedigree. Behind the wheel, though, two of the best. Hannu Mikkola, 4 times a previous winner, and Timo Salonen, whose victory on the RAC came in 1986 in a Peugeot, the year after he'd won the World Championship. Rally cars looked very different before the rule changes that immediately followed that event. A striking contrast indeed between Salonen's Peugeot of '86 and the four-wheel drive Mazda that he was pinning his hopes on in 1989. The car, rather underpowered, would have its best chance if the weather got cold and the stages were frozen, but that wasn't what they were forecasting. Timo Salonen struggling to keep in touch on day one, and he was 7th overall. Salonen's Mazda teammate, Hannu Mikkola, the last of his 4 RAC victories was in the Audi Quattro in 1982. No one has bettered his record on the event. And one thing in Mikkola's favour for the RAC, he was reunited with his longtime co-driver Arne Hertz, the man who'd sat alongside him through all his successes on the event. It looked a stiff task for Mikkola, but remember last year when he was leading into the final morning only to make a mistake when blinded by the sun and he went out of the event. Mikkola, definitely a man who could get into a winning position, but end of day one, he was 10th. Vauxhall shouldered a large part of the British hopes with 16 Valve-Astra GTEs from Malcolm Wilson, Britain's only A-seeded driver, and Louise Aitken-Walker, Europe's #1 woman driver. And they also had the potential for springing a surprise with one of the most astonishing cars of the year, the Nova GTE. On the Isle of Man, in the hands of Dave Metcalfe, it came in 4th overall, a car that could maybe achieve something more than just a class win. But the Astras would be the front runners. Wilson, usually the quickest of the Vauxhall drivers, but not by much. His ambition would be a decent top 10 placing and honours in the front-wheel drive contest, in particular against the old rivals Peugeot. Louise Aitken-Walker has had some wretched luck on the RAC in recent years, so a decent finish, her simple ambition, and the team got the drama-free opening day that they wanted. Other British hopes were mainly driving Fords. The McRae family were united under the RED team banner. Jimmy McRae, immensely experienced on the event, but fully aware of the rear-wheel drive car's unsuitability for what was to come. His son Colin enjoyed matching his father's times on the opening day. Colin is quick but unpredictable, not the ideal combination for the RAC. Russell Brooks has so often been Britain's top finisher on the event, and his British Championship performances this season show he's still a driver to be reckoned with. His teammate in the Mike Little prepared cars is Mark Lovell. The McRaes, Brooks and Lovell, as well as other Ford drivers like Wyndham Evans, were all outside the top 10 after the opening day. The Lancias that were to be seen in the field were privately entered. There was one for the RAC regular Per Eklund, who was 9th. That put him ahead of Argentina's Jorge Recalde. But Audi's Armin Schwartz would go out after a road accident. Peugeot's Håkan Eriksson, another first-day casualty, on what had been a rather strung-out, frustrating opening day. 35 kilometres of stage miles, but as far apart as Chatsworth and Silverstone, Donington and Blenheim. But to come with the Welsh forests, Scotland, the Lake District and the likes of Kielder, Juha Kankkunen held a 5-second advantage on a leaderboard dominated by Japanese manufacturers. But the competition had yet to begin in earnest. The Welsh Forests, Day 2, the start of the genuine action in the 1989 Lombard RAC Rally. The Toyotas had set the pace on the opening day spectator stages, and as the early fog cleared, they remained in charge, but the internal rivalry was fierce. Kankkunen led, but was hounded first by Kenneth Eriksson and then by Carlos Sainz. This is Saints. Early in the day, he watched Kankkunen and Eriksson swap the top spot. Toward the end of the day, he'd be out front, getting overhauled by Kankkunen. It was quite a battle, and Toyota, so desperate for World Championship success, were already considering the possibility of team orders. But they wouldn't get too confident. Problems for David Llewellyn would remind them how fragile such domination can be. Fifth stage of the day, and Llewellyn, the strongest British hope for years, suffered turbo failure and dropped to 77th place. Effectively, his challenge was over. But those were problems for Toyota GB. Toyota Europe were going strong. Kenneth Eriksson surprised a lot of people with his pace. He certainly surprised Kankkunen early on. Mitsubishi continued to offer the strongest challenge to Toyota, but the surprise there was that it was Auricola as much as Vatanen putting the pressure on, most of the time at least. Two fastest times for Pentti during the day, and he would finish it fourth behind Kankkunen, Saints and Eriksson. After a lackluster first day, Ari Vatanen was finding his rhythm. Four fastest stage times during the course of this second day. This was more the style of the 1984 Lombard RAC winner. Vatanen going well, but the day had started badly, with a loose nut finding its way into the turbo system of the Mitsubishi. The unit failed, and Vatanen struggled for 3 long stages. But now he was making up for it, and would finish the day well placed in 5th. The Mazdas were making consistent progress. Timo Salonen here was right behind Vatanen in 6th place. The lack of power of the Mazda especially noticeable on the tight hairpins. Both Timo and Hannu Mikkola were using their cars from the Thousand Lakes Rally, but by the end of the day, they'd be looking rather different. The adaptations were due to be made to Mikkola's car, looking good up until the 12th stage. And that's where he missed a gear, put the car on its roof, and came out looking like this. In all, Mikkola and Hertz, the most successful combination in RAC Rally history, lost a total of 1.5 minutes and dropped down the order to 15th. The privately entered Lancias filled the 2 places behind Salonen. In 7th was Michael Sundström, and in 8th, Sebastian Lindholm. Then came the Mazda of Ingvar Carlsson and the Lancia of Per Eklund. For a while, Russell Brooks had been the leading British runner, but by the end of the day, that position was taken by 11th placed Malcolm Wilson in the front-wheel drive Astra, underlining the fact that this wasn't a Ford Cosworth event. But the Cosworths battled on, carrying much of the British interest. Jimmy McRae was going safely, but behind him his son Colin McRae, young, exuberant, always prone to a mistake, and he made a big one in Dolgethley, sliding into a ditch, and he left the car in a very sorry state. Russell Brooks, as we said, was leading the British runners, getting up into 9th place, but he was to become the first major British retirement. Brooks, taking part in his 22nd RAC Rally, went out of the event after 14 stages.
The second dovey stage, either a piston broke or the turbo broke, we're not quite sure which, but we lost all the oil in the space of 2 or 3 miles, and then obviously the bearings went, so although the car was still drivable, just it wasn't going to go very much further.
And that came after the biggest British disappointment of the second day, David Llewellyn.
Basically the turbocharger blew and an oil pipe ruptured, and all the oil came out of the engine, and I had to fix it, and we lost 17 minutes. That's it basically. Most of the oil had pumped out of the engine, so there was very little oil pressure, and we just had to tickle through sort of 10 miles, and it was painfully slow, like 5 miles an hour, and we lost all that time and all the chance of the win, really.
Kankkunen led at the end of a hard day, his biggest concern anticipating the problems.
But look at the extra light, it's still, you know, there.
Day 3 to Carlisle via the faster stages of the Lake District. Crowds continuing to find even the deepest recesses of the forest. And on day 3, they were joined by the old touring car rivals, Frank Sittner and James Weaver, acquainting themselves with this non-contact motorsport. But for Kankkunen, it would be a tough day. He'd suffer a loss of brakes and an alternator problem and would come under increasing pressure from his charging teammate, Carlos Sainz. Sainz had finished the second day just 19 seconds behind Kankkunen, and he beat Kankkunen on 3 of the first 7 stages of this third day and matched him on 2 more. Kenneth Eriksson also was still in touch. He was 29 seconds off Kankkunen's lead after 2 days, and then he got fastest times on the first 2 stages of day 3. Toyotas still seemed to be in control. And because of that, no one seemed to be taking the confident early challenge of Pentti Riikola too seriously. But he was driving hard and driving well in the Mitsubishi, waiting for any problem from those in front, and before the day was out, he'd get his reward. Before that, though, would come a mistake from his teammate, a mistake that virtually ended Vatanen's challenge. Fortunately for Vatanen, he finished the right way up, shaken, but only about 30 seconds lost at this point, but the handling of the car would be drastically affected. This is why it's always a gamble to try and cut corners. Vatanen launched by a tree root, and out of the smashed windows goes all Bruno Berglund's maps and service schedules. But rally spectators are a generous lot, and while Vatanen got on his way, they collected up all the paperwork and returned it to the crew that evening in Carlisle. But the Mitsubishi Galant was now very second-hand. He was losing more time with the obvious handling problems and had dropped behind Salonen and Sundström. David Llewellyn still in the rally, but 34th. He comes to the same corner that Vatanen got so wrong. And he makes the same mistake. Saves it from the roll, but the drive shaft is broken, the chassis bent. Llewellyn is out. Very soon the brake problems would catch up with Kankkunen, Sainz would lead, and Riikola here would go second. 44 years old, past his best, a talent that had never quite been seen to mature. Well, Pentti was poised to disprove all of that. Kankkunen was only just behind though, and there were other former world champions set to relaunch an attack. Timo Salonen by the end of the day would be 5th. But Sebastian Lindholm, placed 8th after day 2, wouldn't make it to day 4. As evening fell, he went off, becoming a victim of Kielder. Thus, by the end of day 3, Per Eklund would be the top-running Lancia privateer, lying 8th. Eklund, with his aggressive, committed style, he's been rallying for 25 years, was 4th on the RAC in 1985, and always a popular visitor to the British forests. But one of the star drivers and star cars of the day was Malcolm Wilson in the 16-valve Astra GTE. Definitely the right conditions for the front-wheel drive Astra. Wilson would be 10th at the end of a day in which he was consistently matching the pace of the more powerful entrants around him. The British Ford drivers in Wilson's wake, Jimmy McRae, 38 seconds back at the end of the day. And in 13th place, behind Hannu Mikkola, Gwyndaf Evans. And through Grisdale, Evans commented that he'd never driven such a challenging stage, nor had he driven in front of such large and enthusiastic crowds. Crowds enjoy seeing spectacular attacking driving. Mark Lovell usually provides that, but he was back in 16th. And Lovell's missing rear window was an illustration of a quite adventurous day. Colin McRae's Ford also bore the scars, but at the end of the day, he would be out. On the 32nd stage, he would collide with Franco Cunico's pristine Ford, which broke down on the stage. McRae collided with it. Both were out. Still flying, Dave Metcalf's Nova. It looked fast, and there were unlikely rumours that Metcalf had scored a fastest stage time.
Everybody keeps saying that we've got the fastest on that one, but I think we'll have to wait till that's confirmed more than anything. I think we have the class lead quite comfortably, but we're just trying to get a good overall position more than anything. So we're just going hard all the time, just to keep everybody who's behind us, who's trying to make advances on the little Nova behind.
The day would merge into the night in Kielder Forest, where Toyota's confidence was shaken by the loss of Kankanen's lead and the growing pressure of Auricola on Saints. It was clear that a Japanese manufacturer was going to win the Lombard RAC for the first time, but it wasn't clear where this valuable prize was going to go, Mitsubishi or Toyota.
That I'm normally,
Really?
because I think the car is working very well, so it's easy to be relaxed. Team is working well, so it's now down to me, and I'm very happy.
Those were the front runners, but the battered Vatanen couldn't expect any sympathy from an old rival like Timo Salonen.
Ask what happened, how car is so bad looking.
It's like your car normally, Timo.
No, I never see so bad car.
I just got the corner, Timo. I should not cut the corners. I learned it from you. And there was a tree stump in the grass, and that's it.
I think so. Back to driving school, I think so.
Seriously, Harry, what happened this
No,
morning?
exactly. I just got the corner on the first Chrysdale. Not much, but there was a tree stump in the grass, and it just launched it over immediately. Front wheel was bent, but that's all. It's all. They're all aligned now.
The car might have been back in shape, but Ari was struggling to remount his challenge. In Kielder, the view from the Mitsubishi was unclear, but the confusion was obvious. Vatanen back in 7th place, but his teammate had split the Toyotas with 2 days left. Auricola 30 seconds ahead of Kankanen, a minute 36 behind the leader, Carlos Sainz. And the pressure on Sainz for the 10 stages of the 4th day. More action in Scotland, more action in Kielder. He'd never been in such a position before, he'd never won a World Championship rally, and behind, Auricola was getting faster and faster. In fact, Auricola was fastest on 9 of the day's 10 stages, an astonishing performance that cut Sainz's lead to just 31 seconds. Toyota had hoped that behind him Kankanen could put on the pressure, but he went off as soon as he tried to attack. So when the day finished, Sainz was still ahead, but Toyota spirits were gloomy. They couldn't see a way of fending off the charging Auricola, and Sainz certainly wasn't wearing the expression of a man poised for a famous victory. By contrast, the rally art mechanics around the Mitsubishi were buzzing, and their man was confident for the final day.
It shouldn't be any problem tomorrow unless Toyota finds something special. Our car is working very well, and I know some of the Yorkshire stages quite well, and I don't think Carlos knows them so well, so it should be okay.
So the last act in the Yorkshire forests. Sainz desperately defending his 31-second lead, and Toyota had drafted in Phil Short, David Llewellyn's co-driver, to help with maps and try and give Sainz every chance on this decisive day. But Auricola maintained the attack, and the gap was down to 22 seconds. A battle to the end in front of huge crowds, considering that many of these forest spectators have to walk 2 or 3 miles from the nearest car parking. And they witnessed a heartbreaking finale for Sainz, a triumphant one for Auricola. 2 stages left, and Sainz would be in tears after a drive shaft failure left him limping out of the stage. Ironically, it was a new drive shaft fitted earlier in the day as a precaution against failure. So the first victory on a World Championship rally wasn't going to go to the young charger from Spain, but the workman-like Finn from Henley. Pentti Auricola calm and controlled, knowing victory was his. Another casualty of these closing stages would be Per Eklund, out from 8th place after gearbox failure in the Lancia Delta. One final spectator stage for Auricola on the British Steel complex at Humberside, including a water splash to be treated with caution. In recent weeks, we've seen Pentti perhaps struggling to adapt to new machinery in the Mobile One Rally Challenge, the Toyota included. But one opportunity in the Group A Mitsubishi has been grasped in famous style. Pentti Ricola and co-driver Ronan McNamee. Others now, with little to lose, could attack the water splash more directly. Carlos Sainz having to settle for second, but it won't be long before we see the man who was once set for a soccer career with Real Madrid claiming a World Rally Championship victory. Juha Kankkunen barely lifting off, not sparing the spectators at the water splash, but third place for the man who seemed to have the rally in his grasp in the first 2 days. And fourth place here for Kenneth Eriksson. And Ari Vatanen, many people's favourite for victory if the Toyotas failed, but he'd had his adventures and no one was happier than Ari to see victory go to an old rival and near neighbour in Berkshire, Pentti Ricola. Driver's eye view of the water splash there, and a driver's eye view of the subsequent problems the water splash can provide.
Left and jump.
Most spectacular on this final fling for the drivers, Timo Salonen. He came sixth behind Vatanen and Eriksson. Disappointing event for Mazda, but a mightily frustrating one for Toyota, who've led for 52 of the 55 stages. Mazda's in the next 3 places. This was Michael Sundström in 7th, and he was followed by Ingvar Carlsson in 8th and Hannu Mikkola in 9th. The scene, a motorway service station on the M1 before the final run into Nottingham. 44-year-old Pentti Ricola trying to come to grips with his first World Championship success. Carlos Sainz trying to come to terms with a victory that slipped away.
We were trying maximum, absolutely.
Which is all you could ask for as Sainz looked across to the triumphant combination. Ireland's Ronan McNamee, among the best co-drivers around, and the Mitsubishi Galant, a car that lived up to expectations.
Fantastic all the way through, and it's just an incredible enjoyment when you drive a car which does what you want to do it, and it's an unbelievable feeling.
The cheers weren't only for Ricola, but for Malcolm Wilson, who got home in the top 10, making up for Dave Metcalf's late exit in the Nova. And for Gwyndaf Evans, who followed Wilson home in 11th. That's how the two-wheel drive battle resolved itself, the front-wheel drive Astra giving Wilson what was an unexpected best British finish.
I didn't think before the start that it would have been possible to actually be the first two-wheel drive car, but I think as per usual, the whole team and the Astras just performed impeccably, just like it has done on the previous World Championship events this year. We haven't had any problems at all with the car. The whole thing has just run perfectly for us.
Perfect for Pentti as well. As he drove up the winner's ramp, he triggered a switch which turned on the Nottingham Christmas lights and sparked new life into a career that most people thought was coming to an end. Pentti Ricola and Ronan McNamee, winners of the '89 Lombard RAC Rally.